quick outline for today's class, which it's Ryan's fault. But we have a new tool that some of you will find helpful, which is to make a copy of your wikis, so you can, instead of just using the backups. Where did that go? Sort of overview for today. It's the first thing listed in what's new. Does everybody see that in DesignWrite? You can join the group if you'd like, but I wanted to cover a couple of things. In your version of it, does your version of DesignWrite look like this or like this? The difference is the first thing's a link. Are you guys getting this version with the first thing as a link or no? Yours is a link? Chris, what do you have? Is yours a link? Okay. I don't know why I can't get mine to refresh in my browser, but if you're all getting it, that's good for you. So if you click on that link, it will take you to our group. Some of you might have seen this. But what's I haven't quite figured out how to make this into a plugin, but you can download that JSON file and then import it in any of your own Tiddly spots. And you should, and I'll demo how that will work. And then what we can do is do a little bit of work on each other's wikis. Okay, so I've already got that downloaded, but if you just download it and throw it on your desktop for now, so you can just, download it, throw the file on your desktop. I'm going to replace mine, and I'll just save that, and I'll keep that there. Okay. I'm going to close some other tabs. And then I wanted to just play in some different people's spaces. but give you a chance to play with them as well. Because sometimes playing with somebody else's code and stuff will kind of give you a chance to learn a couple of different techniques. So so we'll start with Derek's brightly colored thing. No, it's not a problem. But why does, and these are little quirks in Tiddlywiki. Why does Derek start with the search box partially filled and pulled down like that, right? So this part, right? Why does that start? Why does that happen?
When I saved, I had something typed.
Yeah, it's called state. And so this is an important part of designing interactive apps, whether you're making a game, a website, or anything. There's this concept called state, which asks, what's the current state of your program? How is it left? And the way that Tiddlywiki works, especially when it's being served in TiddlySpot, however you leave it is how you will come back to it, unless you clear the state. And there's a way to do that. I forget how. So if Derek had cleared the state, and maybe if he wants to leave us on a particular tab, whatever tab he leaves us on, and then saves, it will work. It's a minor little thing, and you can tell, and it probably shows up in DesignWrite all the time because I forget to do it. Like if I leave a draft Tiddler open or something, it's like, oh, geez, So that's how you clear that issue.
You can also set it so, like, how you can set which wikis are the first ones to open. You can set the sidebar to do that too.
Yeah, you can set he might have a is it an appearance
You'll use just tag your design.
info?
No. Appearance. Settings.
I think appearance, toolbars, settings. There it is. Yeah. So this sets the default. You can set your default sidebar tab if you want to. You can do other things in settings. These are Tiddlywiki specific. And if anyone wants to, and if anyone cares enough to ask in the group, how do you clear the search box? It's just the name of a Tiddler. And I have it actually you can search a DesignWrite group, because I think a student from a couple years ago figured out how to do it and wrote it in the group. So if I search through it, I'll find that. What I'm going to do, and what you can do, is I'm going to import. So visit Derek's page and import the copy tiddlyspot.json that you just downloaded. Okay, so you go ahead and import that. And then the top Tiddler should be called Copy This Wiki. So, oh my God, they're going crazy. So I'm going to make a copy of Derek's. You have to give it, and this should look familiar, but edit it. And all I did is if you're interested, you can kind of look and see what I figure out how to do. Is I just took his Tiddlers that make TiddlySpot and copied them and modified them slightly. So I'm going to call this a Steve copy of, and then I'll put the rest of his name. I'm going to copy it. And because we're going to be, for these copies, especially if you're doing somebody else's work, if you just give them a basic password, and if we all use the same password, then it will be easy for him to figure out how to get to it in case he wants to do something. I don't know why you want to do it, but I'll just put DesignWrite as the password and create the wiki. Paste the name. I'm not sure why I can't see my password. I think it might have to do with the color settings that Derek's got, I think. And load it, and I think it will work. And so now I'm visiting Steve's copy of Derek's settings. So now I've got my own version of Derek's. I guess I can save it. And after I make some changes, mess around with it, if I find something that would be interested, hey, Derek, check this out, then you can post that to the group with a link to your copy. So it's a way that you can write on other people's. And Ryan and I think Derek and maybe Steve's games or Chris's games, some of your projects would benefit from this. Like you can allow other people then to make copies of the wiki. It's a little kludgy. But if you wanted to tell people, oh, if you wanted to use this, here's how you do it. So, so now we're playing. So let's look at Derek's thing, and it doesn't. Oh, there. Okay. So it makes some changes to the default tiddlers, I guess, for some reason. So it's not quite perfect. But what I wanted to play with was Derek's. Where's your grass? You did something.
Just type in grass.
Grass. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So if you poke around basically he's got a directory to like 104 grass types. I don't know what this stuff is. They're Pokemon cards. That's all right. I don't need to get it, right? But each one of these cards has a bunch of fields and like a lot of fields. And I thought it would be interesting then to navigate amongst those fields. So how would you do that? Like, how would you say, oh, I want to show all the different abilities, right? So I want to see all the tiddlers that have this ability Overgrow. So I don't know if you're playing with that, but how would we do that? Do we have any way to do that? Do you remember how we do that?
You would make something and tag it with Overgrow.
Well, they already have the ability 1 field Overgrow, so you could tag it, but that's a lot of work. I think if I clone his grass, so I just want to navigate through his abilities. I think what we're looking for here would be this each ability 1. So that's going to list each ability 1, and then ultimately we'll list all the tiddlers that are under it. So let's just test this, see if we're getting anywhere.
You're missing a bracket.
Yep. So we've got them. Let's see if we've got the ability 1 yet. We do. Okay, those are all the abilities. We'll put them in a header. And this is, I think we did this in like the first exercise. So we get each ability 1, and then we list all the ones that have the current value of ability 1 in the field ability 1. And we should then be able to list all those tiddlers. And it doesn't quite work for some reason because I don't know why. Ability 1. This worked when I did it earlier, of course. So we know we're there. So debugging, but this would be a way to add another layer of interactivity to Derek's. And why don't we get that? Oh, there we go. This needs to be closed. And we can make this a link. So this would, I mean, he could do this with every one of his fields. And so I think Derek's project, Marcus's project, Mickey's, maybe Michael's. I had to think about Michael's. Maybe Chris's have that. You know, you've got all these field sets. So now I'm thinking that if you're going to stick with the same projects as opposed to create new ones, what are you going to add to it? And might be some ways to navigate through those fields that you have for all your objects. And so this works pretty well. But that's the kind of stuff that you can play with. And so you can use somebody else's data to say, oh, could I do this? And that would be a nice thing. So you might look at Derek's project and see what could he add to his. Looking through Derek's, what else could you add to Derek's? I'll save this because that's kind of interesting. If you were a user, how would you want this to look? We've used a feature called Appear, which you can find in DesignWrite Studio by searching for Appear in advanced search. Drag that over to Derek's, import it. And because I made a copy, I can actually add some additional plugins. And we could wrap that around in an Appear. Still need the a break in there somewhere. I think it goes here. So this isn't bad. This lists all, you can kind of list all the abilities and then get a list of the, what are they, cards, Pokemon cards, objects, whatever, that match that. So that's not bad, right? So you might look and see if there's different ways that you can build on somebody else's project and add some layer of interactivity or do something to somebody else's and say, what can I do with this? So that's one thing we could do with Derek's. Once you've done that, then you can visit the Google group. Presumably he posted it, hopefully. D-E-R-I-C-K? E-C-K? E-K. D-E-R-E-K. Pokemon. I think he called it Pokédex, actually. Huh. Did you posted this, I thought.
Yeah.
There we go. 23 hours ago. So that offers somebody some additional ideas of stuff that they could work on, right? So sometimes looking at other people's stuff allows you to see different things than you can see in your own projects. And so I find sometimes working, that's why I kind of like seeing all the stuff that you write, because it gives me ideas for things that I might want to build. So Derek's was a pretty cool one. And on the, wait, is it asking me something? Yes, post as is, because I've got all these email addresses. So I thought we'd just take a look at a couple, and then just ask you to find 2 or 3 interesting projects that you might make copies of, add some code, and add it to that list. It's called Forced Interaction in my class. Right, so you're all captive here. You have not much choice. So Gladson, who must be one of the grad students, I know. He, I made a little thing that I posted in the group about like multiple images. I don't know if any of you saw that. He's got something pretty cool going on here. So this is a navigation across multiple images on a first, previous, next, last loop. Did anybody take a look at that code to see how that works? It was posted in the group. It's in the design right, but it basically takes, if you look at the code, there's the key code. He's got a collection of photographs that are all tagged something. Look at it. Looks like he comes to it right here. They're all tagged images. Okay, and then this code wraps inside of a button. How many people have used buttons? So a couple buttons users, and Chris, I know you've done some buttons, and Steve, you've done buttons, and you played with buttons, right? So you open a button, $sign button, you close it, and then inside is an action. It's kind of like a click. So you create in this case, you create a button that's labeled first. The button is labeled there, so I add some X's, so you can put whatever you want in there. You could also transclude a photograph or a button image in there if you wanted to, instead of the words. And what this does is it gets all the tiddlers that are tagged image, and then gets the first one. And then the previous one gets all the tiddlers tagged image and gets, based on the current tiddler, current illustration, and gets the next one, the one after, and the last one. When you press the button, it does this thing called a set field, and I think Steve and Chris have done a lot of set fields. Basically, you create another tiddler, in this case, $:/current illustration, and write the name of the tiddler. And when you press on first, it goes and gets that tiddler and displays that image. And you can play with this. You can just change the tag. You don't have to necessarily see the whole logic of the macro. And so that's kind of cool. I don't quite understand what he's doing down here. I don't think he quite finished this. What should we see down there? It should be like some description, some caption on the actual image. Okay. So one suggestion for him would be you could try to figure out how can you display that caption and then write some captions for him. You don't have to describe the image. You can say, this is the caption for image 1, this is the caption for image 2. Image 3, and see if you can figure out how to do that. He's doing it right. Not sure where he's doing it, but that would be something to play with. You'd have to sort of poke through his code a little bit and see if you can figure out, like, oh, I know what you should do there. Why would you want to create an interface that has this kind of first, previous, next, last, and just keeps moving those images? How's this different than the other way that we've been creating interactivity? Okay. Most of the stuff that you've been doing when you go to when you display the contents of another tiddler, you move to that tiddler. Okay, so that's movement. We're just transcluding. In this case, we're displaying the image. I could imagine that as a technique for looking at tarot cards, Pokemon cards. Steve's stories might benefit from this idea of creating a frame and pushing stuff into it that you move through. Okay, so it's less jarring perhaps for the reader, because they are going to feel, and remember the definition of a transclusion is that you bring content in and they don't even know it, really, right? This is very similar to what Google News does, okay? So we sort of, it's a little bit more advanced than what we did in that exercise when we reverse engineered Google News, but it's the same idea, okay? And again, it uses that first, previous, next, last, and you might find that code at this point in the semester should be, you should be able to, if you're interested in that kind of thing, you should be able to break apart that code and understand it. In last night's workshop, and I'll post that video, one of the other students was on, and he asked if we could, instead of just looking at an image, could we actually put the contents of a tiddler in there? And so I created another macro, I think it's on the What's New, where you look at the contents of a tiddler instead of the contents of an image. And it's almost the same logic, just a couple of different changes. So you can look at that. But I thought this was pretty cool. And some of you might find that helpful, and you might have some suggestions here. Again, the idea here is that this is kind of odd. I think he hadn't finished it yet. So you might play with that. That would be something to play with. Or there might be something entirely different that you think he could do with this content. We looked at Justin's, and we didn't get a chance to see Justin's project. This is similar in some respects to, he's got the same issue. He forgot to clear his cache there. Marguerite is working with, what are these called? SVGs. And Brandon is working with SVGs, and some of you, we did SVGs and shapes when we did that shapes exercise very early in the semester. This is an SVG he downloaded from Wikipedia, made some modifications to it, but not much. But you click on a county, he's got an overlay here, and it takes you to a tiddler that belongs to that county and displays content from that county. I'm not sure what he's doing here. This is the next project, so I'm not sure where he's going with that. But this was pretty cool. It's got that overlay. What might he do differently? So if you were going to see this this is actually a project that one wouldn't surprise me to see show up on New York State's website at some point, because he works for the state, and they do something with economic development. I'm not sure, but this is actually an interesting way for him to maintain data that is public facing. Okay, same idea. Instead of traveling to the tiddler for that county, he knows where he wants to go and what he wants to display. Maybe he can display this data. And you can help him figure out, he could display the data over here to the left of the map, right? So when you click on the county, the data shows up over here, the same tiddler. So again, you don't have to move to the tiddler. People like that. I mean, if you think, we're trying to sort of push TiddlyWiki a little bit further into imagining how people might actually use it. And so that might be something that you'd want to do. And ultimately, you can push away all of the TiddlyWiki specific stuff so that the people who are reading it don't even really know that they're writing in TiddlyWiki, or that you've written it in TiddlyWiki. So it looks to them like it's, when you visit a web page, you really have no idea what it's been written in, and you don't care. And so we might want to do the same kind of thing here. So you can play with his, see what you can figure out to do, and see if you can change his stuff around. Take a look at hers. Malika's got she's got a lot of content. She's got all sorts of stuff going on here. She's got 2 cases. They've got details. She's got suspects. It's got clues. It's a lot of tiddlers. It's a lot of movement, and she's got all the structure. What she hasn't built is the interaction in a way that would be easy, right, for people to actually use. So like you might want, when you click Jessica Miller, maybe you just want that stuff to appear in context without having to travel to the Jessica Miller tiddler. So you might play with hers and see if you can, she calls it crack the case, so you can, don't focus on the content, focus on the interaction, and see if you can change some of the interaction in a way that would make it more, make it easier for you as a reader. So that would be, hers is really interesting. She uses, this is, Eric's not here today, but it's the same concept of lots of different moving pieces around one sort of narrative story. So I think what her next step is to try and create a navigation system that actually works a little bit more cleanly. So hers would be useful for that. Michael, Michael's thing is cool. I'm looking for the what are you working on? There was something that you were, oh yeah, I forget how to get into it. Contents. There it is. Okay. Think user here as well as writer. He's got nice graphics. He's got some information down here. Yep. He's got a whole bio here. So there's a lot of stuff going on here. And you might think about, well, how would you actually use this? And there's, I know he's still working on it, and that's no problem at all. But you might visit it and see, like, well, what game is this? Okay, so some of you might know that game and might have a sense of, well, what would you want? Okay, like you're visiting this, what would you want as a user? And so think about different ways that Michael might shift that user interface a bit to deliver what you would want. Okay, so I pushing you to think as a user using his stuff and then put your eyes on it so he would benefit from your eyes and a different understanding. Mickey's thing is interesting. I wanted to highlight what he's doing here. The challenge in Mickey's was that this is World of Warcraft, right? So you pick a faction, and I wanted you to look at his code in this select, because it's pretty cool what he's doing. It's like it's a narrowing select. So you see this when you shop on Amazon, right? If you're shopping for a computer or phone or something, you say, show me the Android phones, and all the other choices disappear. And then show me the Android phones that cost less than $300, and everything disappears. So show me the Android phones that cost more than $500, and you get a list of them. So he continues to narrow his filter, and that's what he's built here. So I wanted you to take a look at his code, and it's right in the lists, and he's writing selections. And I don't know how many of you have, anybody else work with selects? Anybody else doing any select work? Take a look at this select and play with it. It's always easier to play with somebody else's stuff. Play with the select, and you might find that, well, that's something that you'd like to play with either for your existing data set or for a new project. Again, cards, you're going to need select and tarot cards. So you might select one, and then it's going to narrow the range and select the other. Basically, the way select works is whatever tiddler you pick, let me close this and put the preview on. So right here, we're right on the faction. I'm going to close this so that the race drops down. So we're right in this code here. So I select Horde, and it writes the value of my selection to this tiddler called $:/new tiddler faction. And then on my next select, I want to say list a filter that's tagged this, and that's also tagged with the value of the faction that I just selected. And then for warrior, he's got a complicated tagging scheme. But if you look at the logic, you'll see how he uses this. It's called faceted search or narrowing search. Google does it. Everybody uses it, but we do the same. But what you have here is the ability to sort of see how it works in a different way in TiddlyWiki, and it's kind of cool. And then he takes this navigate to is down here. He creates a new tiddler name that he's navigating to. It's defined up in here in this first. You can play with that define and see what he does. So this is useful to look at Mickey's code, both to see how he's doing it, and then if you're interested in suggesting, well, what would you do with this, might benefit. I have trouble with backgrounds because my eyes are really bad. So if you remember how to get rid of, if you don't want to look at his background and it's annoying you, I really like the fact that you have backgrounds. Those are good. But when you're in a development mode, sometimes you don't want to be distracted by that. So what do? You get rid of it by background image. Gone. So I didn't make a copy of this, so I'm not going to save my changes. Michael Sharam, the guy who sits there, he's not here today because his car is dead. He's got something really interesting going on here. So I would encourage you to take a look at his project. Basically, he's got a lot of navigation on the basis of names. So you navigate to all these different names. If you look at the amount of tiddlers that we have open, and if you think about our navigation structure, we're just bouncing all over the walls here. And you might find that it's going to get really hard to keep track of where you are. So think of, well, what kind of features could we build to help me keep track of where I am? And again, perhaps to do something other than move to that other tiddler. Okay, maybe there's something else that I want to see other than a link to that tiddler. Okay. We haven't worked much with macros, but he's got, everything is using those double square brackets, which was really good for the first week or two. How else could we work with that? What else could we do instead of just building links? What else could we do if we wanted to make connections to tiddlers, or we want to say, well, okay, there's something about this other tiddler that I want to do. What else could we do? Okay. In DesignWrite, you've seen my yellow highlight, I think. Where did we do it? We did in these highlight macros. We highlight the text in yellow. So it looks like that, basically. If we put those in his, and then instead of having square brackets, we put them in yellow. Didn't I just import those? Oh, you need the style sheet too. Now it's yellow. So now I lost the one that I was working on. So now we're highlighting them in yellow. Okay, so at least we've got that. And you're going to say, well, that doesn't provide any of the same functionality at all. It just highlights it in yellow. If we mess around with the macro a bit, and in addition to highlighting it in yellow, we built a link around it. So we built the link around the macro. So now we've got a highlighted link that will take us to the alternative tiddler. You can then, from there, you can say, well, we can build a peer, we can build whatever functionality we want inside that macro. So you might suggest to Michael that instead of using double square brackets, which is only going to get you so much, you write a macro and show them that, oh, we could do this kind of stuff, and then you can change whatever you want to happen in that macro. Okay, so you could even allow the user to say, sometimes make them links, sometimes highlight them in yellow, sometimes highlight them in orange, sometimes use a peer, so you can create a level of interactivity for the user who could change what happens when you get to one of those links. His is interesting because he's got a ton of content, and now we have to help him figure out how to create some navigational structure around that. So you might play with that, give him some ideas for that. And I think we've got a couple more that I wanted to take a look at. Shannon's is really cool, so definitely play with that. And I just started playing with it this morning, but so like, do I want to try new foods? Have I ever gone skydiving? And do I prefer this or that? And if I choose mostly A, then I identify with this character. So you might look under her hood and see, well, what is she doing here? Okay. It's really interesting what she's done. She's got all the words, and she did the green eggs and ham. She took the green eggs and ham challenge. Any one of you could take that. She's got all the words set as tags. I didn't know there's goat in green eggs and ham. But you might play with that to see, well, what could we suggest that she might do with that, or at least look and see what she's done. This quiz is very cool. Her logic, so it's going to take a little bit of effort to get through her quiz and debug it, but it's really a nice illustration of sort of a gaming approach. She uses $radio. I don't think I've seen anybody else use $radio in the class. That's pretty cool. That's, sort of like a button, but it's radio button. Steve, I think that would be helpful for you in some of your work. And she generates, I think she could probably generate this through code instead of forcing the user to pick it. But she's doing the set field tiddler, but take a look at her thing. It's really interesting what she's done, and the way that her quizzes work is cool. So take a look at that. So I picked those out, and then Derek's in here twice because he's really special. I don't know why Derek's in here twice. I have no idea how he showed up twice. Oh well. So what I want you to do is, if you really want to work on your projects, that's fine. I don't care that much. But I think it would be kind of cool to spend 15, 20 minutes picking one of those, poking through and writing some code on top of, or making a copy of it, obviously, writing some code in somebody else's Tiddly spot and sharing it with them through that group, so that you could kind of have that experience, same as what I've been doing, of working on somebody else's project, playing with their code, making something else happen in somebody else's project, because that's a little different. So I just wanted to kind of open the class with that idea, and then I'm going to spend the rest of the hours to you to do wherever you want to go. And if anybody wants to grab me and make me pay attention to them, I'm more than happy to do that. So any other questions generally, or things that people were working on, not finding, or any questions that I missed in the group that I haven't responded to? Okay, so I'll come respond to yours. All right. So Andrew wants something. Anybody else want anything in particular, or I'm just going to come and knock on your computer and bug you? I'll do that. All right. James, I think we'll stop the video. Thanks, and